Hello everybody.
Hello.
My name is Tom Pingel. I'm the utilities director here for the city of Sioux City.
I'm Vicki Baker, I'm the plant manager. Thanks for the invite.
Yep. So we've been going around to different groups and explaining the project that we're starting here in the city with the wastewater plant. We're just trying to be as transparent as possible, let the residents know what's going on and kind of have a stake in this, because it's your rates that pay for this plant. So sometimes people get that confused with your taxes are going up because of this. Your taxes don't go up because of the sewer. It's all built into your sewer rate. So when you pay your sewer bill, that's what's funding the wastewater plant. So kind of get started into this. I came on about 3 years ago in June, so almost 3 years ago, into my position. But before that, I worked here at the plant from 2014 to 2017. I started as an operator in training and then kind of worked my way up and then left to do some engineering work at a private firm and came back to the city. When I got back, Vicki wasn't in her role yet. She got promoted up into her role, and we looked at each other and looked at the plant and said, you know, what are we going to do about this? The plant is right now in very dire conditions. A lot of things are breaking down, things that aren't repairable, like the concrete. To kind of explain, there's sections of the plant, there's a lot of processes in the plant. A lot of them utilize concrete structures, large tanks, about probably 40 times the size of this room for some of our processes. And when we got into those tanks to do some inspections, the tank walls are about 2 feet thick, or were 2 feet thick. You can imagine when they build these structures, they put rebar in those structures when they pour the concrete. Well, we could see the rebar floating that was supposed to be in the middle of the structure. So over a foot of concrete has fallen off and deteriorated in different places around the plant. And in fact, there's concrete decking that our employees walk on when they walk on the tanks. And that decking is very weak, and we had a section of decking probably 2 or 3 times the size of this table here collapse about 15-20 minutes after some of our staff walked across it. So there's a lot of issues going on. A lot of our pumps are broken or don't work or in for repair, stuff like this. So we can't, Vicki and I, and even the council and the mayor, we can't just willy-nilly start fixing this stuff. As you can imagine, the Iowa DNR has a lot of rules and regulations we have to follow. So in order to do that, in order to go in and start fixing things, we had to spend $1 million on a study to study and look at what needs to be fixed and what's the path to fix it and how to maintain it for over the next 10 to 20 years. And that study is called a facility plan, and it's required by the state of Iowa and the EPA. So out of that study, the main purpose of that study was to look at, well, should we fix this plant here that we have? And what's that gonna cost? Or, like we all kind of wanted, should we build a brand new plant down by the airport and get all those odors and everything out of town? Unfortunately, when we looked at the cost for a brand new plant, it was nearly $1 billion. And for one, we knew that that's not feasible, because our rates would have went up tenfold. If you had a sewer bill that was $30, if we would have built the new plant, your sewer bill would have been $100. So we didn't want to put that on the residents and obviously the industries that, you know, provide a lot of jobs here in Sioux City. So we decided to stay. Not me, I shouldn't even say we. It's the city council and the mayor decided that's not the best option. What we're going to do is follow Plan B in the facility plan, which was basically to rehab the facility at the current location. So by the time the plant is fully rehabbed, it'll be a brand new facility at the current location. And I should mention, there's like this weird duplicating thing going on here. So just ignore that. And also, this is pretty informal, so anytime you have a question, just raise your hand. We can talk about it right then and there. Yeah.
So, do you have any kind of an idea what it's gonna cost us stuff? Because usually rehabbing versus new is about 3/4 the same cost as new. So it's
Yeah.
gonna be about 3/4 of a billion.
You know, that's a great question. I failed to say how much it's going to cost to rehab the plant.
Could you, every time someone asks a question, if you could repeat the
Yeah,
question? That'd be
she
awesome.
asked, you know, how much does it cost to rehab the plant? She said it's about 3/4 the cost to rehab versus building something brand new. The rehab cost is 500 million, so it was half the price. Why was it half and not 3/4? Because that's pretty close. We're gonna utilize some infrastructure at the plant that still has about 50 years of life, some newer parts of the plant that were built in 2007. And the cost to build the pipe from the current location 7 miles south down to where we wanted to build the new plant was $200 million just for the pipe. So not building that pipe and saving some infrastructure at the current location ended up saving us about $450 million. So that was pretty much the only option we had. Even if we wanted to go build the $1 billion plant, we don't have the bonding capacity to get the funds to go ahead with that. Yes, ma'am.
So 2007 is when they had rehabbed it?
In 2007, they did a minor, she asked, was 2007 the last time, was when they rehabbed it? There's been 4 major rehabs at the plant. In 2007 was a smaller rehab.
Okay.
I'll get into the life of the plant here.
Okay.
It's a great question. So the plant was built in 1961. That's the majority of the plant is from 1961. Wastewater plants are designed for 20-year lifespan. So we're going on 65 years on our current infrastructure. That's why we're the lowest rates in the state of Iowa. We have the lowest sewer rates. We have the lowest industrial sewer rates in the state of Iowa currently. And it's because we haven't done anything for about 65 years, besides some minor rehabs here and there. We treat about 16 million gallons a day. That's fairly not that much. We're still the number 2 producing wastewater treatment plant in the state of Iowa. That doesn't really mean much because the number 1 producer in the state of Iowa is Cedar Rapids, and they're in top 25 in the United States. We're top 50 in the United States. Our wastewater treatment plant, we treat more pollutants than Denver Metro's wastewater treatment plant. So just to put it in perspective how large our plant is for our community, yeah, we have a smaller population, 120,000 people with our sister cities, but the population equivalency of how much we treat is about 6 million people. But that's because we have 72 industries in town, and 32 of the 72 are major industries. So they put a lot of pollutants into the wastewater, at the treatment plant.
We don't do Dakota City, do we?
Yeah, that's my question. Are we doing Dakota City and Dakota Dunes?
Yeah, we do, we don't do Dakota City. They have their own small plant. We treat the residential waste from South Sioux City. They just, not very smart in my opinion. They built a wastewater plant to treat 3 industries, and they just put it online about a year ago, about 10 months ago. So they spent about $65 million just to treat 3 industries that we were already treating. They separated from us, but they still send us all their residential wastewater. We treat North Sioux City's wastewater, Sergeant Bluff, and Dakota Dunes. Yep. But the plan for South Sioux City in the next 5 to 10 years is to expand their plant and put about a $200 million expansion onto their plant and treat the rest of their residents, which is only 10,000 people. So you can see how expensive wastewater treatment plants really are. Ours is 500 million. We're going to treat 120,000 people with 72 industries. So that just shows orders of magnitude really do matter. Building a bunch of small plants is really expensive. Centralizing all the waste into one plant, in my opinion, is the best way to do it.
I just wondered about Dakota Dunes, or Dakota City, because they had in the paper that they were one of the top pollutants with
Oh, I didn't see that.
It was
No.
in the paper just last week, and they are the biggest polluter, that location, that
Yeah.
company.
That's the problem. We have more wastewater plants that have potential to discharge the river. There's more outfall, there's more pipes now, and that means there's more risk to the river when there's more people discharging into it. I forgot to mention how this gets paid. I kind of said that our rates pay for it, and that's how it works. But when we got into the study to figure out who's paying for what, we realized that 75% of the flows and loads, and the loads, when I say loads, I mean pollutants that come to the plant are from the industries. The rest of it is us residential users and commercial users. But we looked at the books, and they were only paying 40% of the bill. So the residents were footing 60% of the bill, and the industries are paying 40. That didn't make sense to us, so we recommended that they pay 75 and we pay 25. The council and the mayor decided, and they're the ones that have a better pulse on this. I'm not a politician. My job is to run things in the city, the trash, the wastewater, the stormwater stuff. They have a better pulse on this, and they decided that was a little too much. That could have put some people out of business. So we're going 50-50. So we're paying 50% of the bill, the industries are paying 50% of the bill, even though they send 75% of the loads and flows. And I will say, and this isn't to crap on industries, because they do provide a lot of jobs here in town, a lot of opportunity, but their strength of wastewater is what's causing the wastewater plant to slowly erode. If you can imagine, as the wastewater is coming down the pipe and even in the plant, it's deteriorating. When things deteriorate, just like when we eat food, it lets off gas, like when we fart. And those gases are toxic, and they're destroying the concrete, destroying the pumps, destroying everything at the plant. So we want the industries to understand that we're helping them, but they need to help us too.
Before it was 40-60, and now it's gonna be 50-50.
It's 50-50 now, and in fact, you guys already experienced 2 rate increases out of the 5. So the first one was 20%, the next one that you already experienced was 10%. So your bill has gone up, and you might not have even known it, because it's a really small increase for the residents. But you can imagine if you have a utility bill that's $500,000 a month, and it goes up 10-20%, they're not too happy about it. They had actually worked with the Chamber of Commerce and the Sioux Land Initiative to push against this project and actually try to stop this project from happening, which that's not an option. We are almost under consent decree from the EPA. What that means is they come in. If that were to happen, we're not there yet. And luckily, I don't think we're going to get there. But if that were to happen, they basically kick Vicki out of her office, tell her to go down in the closet. They set up their office at the plant, and they make the decisions what's going to happen. They say, hey, we're going to build this brand new at that new location. We as in the city council, our representatives, wouldn't have a say in it, because if they voted no, they go to jail. That's how serious this stuff gets. So we are heading this off, doing things that the state wants us to do to try to control it ourselves. All right. I've pretty much said a lot of this. Urgent action is needed to stay in compliance. In fact, we've had a large breakdown this month that caused us to go out of compliance. This is Vicki and I's first real violation we've had together in the past 3 years. Before that, the managers and operators of the plant, they had 39 violations in 2019 alone. So we got a good staff and good folks working for us that have good drive and they know what they're doing. But unfortunately, in the past, it just wasn't really like that. So we're trying to operate this plant. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I didn't want to stop you mid-sentence, but the 2 EPA regions, what are the 2?
Yeah, I'll cover that. So in our area here, because we treat wastewater from 3 different states, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa. Well, Nebraska and Iowa, we're in Region 7. We're in the same EPA region. But South Dakota, they're in a different EPA region. I think it's Region 5. And so when we do stuff like facility plans or all the stuff that goes along with starting to build a new plant, anti-dag, they do archaeological studies and they go and dig to make sure where you're building the new plant, there's not an Indian burial ground or anything like that there. So it's a long process. It's been 2.5 years now to get to this point. We started 2.5 years ago on this. And so working with 2 different EPA regions, you can imagine that's pretty tough. 3 different states, it's a lot of different regulations, and they have their own DNRs in all these different states as well. Like I said, the 5 communities, 32 major industrial users. What qualifies as a major industrial user? You have to discharge more than 25,000 gallons per day. So that, and if we had our smallest industrial user probably discharges twice that. And our largest, which is Seaboard Triumph, they discharge 3 million gallons a day. So out of our 16 million gallons a day, 3 of it is just one industry. And in fact, some days they deliver 50% of the pollutants to the wastewater plant one day. And talking about that reminds me that to talk more about the plant, our plant is rated to treat a certain amount of pollutants. And the major one that we look at is BOD. It stands for biological oxygen demand. What that means is if you put pollutants in the water, how much oxygen is it taking out of the water? And you know, the fish, everything in all the aquatic life, all the plants and everything like that utilize the transfer of oxygen. So we're rated to treat 87,000 pounds of BOD a day. But right now we're getting about 120,000 pounds a day. So we're at 110% capacity of our plant. We're well over our capacity of our plant. So DNR doesn't like that, but more so that we don't have enough equipment to treat that much. And the last time we presented this, someone said, well, what happens if you just shut the valve? There is no valve to shut off. Even if there was, we wouldn't want to shut it off because that would back up the flow into all the lift stations and then eventually into all of our basements. And then, you know, we wouldn't be able to utilize flushing our toilets or doing our laundry or anything like that. So, yeah, go ahead.
Why did I think that Seaboard Triumph pre-treated their wastewater?
They actually do.
And it's still 50%
Yep,
of
yep.
your.
Out of our 32 industries, and this was a major point when the Chamber of Commerce was against this project was, well, everyone, if you're going to do this, all the industries, their bills are going to go way up, so they're going to go in and put pre-treatment. And they're worried about if you put in pre-treatment, that means their bills will go down, and how are we going to fund this?
Oh.
Well, out of our 32 industries, 28 of them already pre-treat. And the other ones that don't, they can't really pre-treat because the nature of their pollutants in their wastewater is mainly nitrogen and ammonia. To treat that kind of stuff out, you'd have to build your own wastewater plant instead of just trying to separate sludge and float. They call it DAP. This other kind of pretty easy pre-treatment, they wouldn't be allowed in Purvey to. It was a great question.
I have a question
Yeah.
about Seaboard. Okay, they bring the jobs, but they do most of the waste. Can they build their own wastewater treatment?
Yeah, so she asked Seaboard, you know, they bring in a lot of jobs, but can they build their own plant? And they most certainly could. And I'm not ragging on Seaboard. I think they're great to work with. We work with them every day. I'm just trying to explain the capacities and the magnitude of certain industries versus others. You know, most industries, they're not in their I guess industry to treat wastewater. That's not what they're good at. Seaboard, they like to slaughter hogs, and that's what they're really good at. To run a wastewater plant, as you can imagine, is a lot of work. And first of all, you have to have a lot of licensed operators, and there's not very many of those. And then it's a lot of cost. So the main short answer for your question is it's quite cheap. It's more cost effective for us to treat their wastewater than them to do it themselves. That kind of goes back to the order of magnitude. We have this very large plant. We have all the process and everything in place. For us to treat 1 pound of BOD is a lot more cost effective than they to do it themselves. That doesn't mean they can't go ahead and build one, but it's quite expensive. Our electric bill every month is about $250,000 a month just for electricity to treat the wastewater that comes through the plant. So you can imagine how expensive it could be to run your own plant, but that doesn't mean they can't.
Yeah, they can afford it.
The thing is, they would have to go to the Iowa DNR to get a permit to discharge to the river. And just like I said, Dakota Dunes has one, Mid-American has one, the power plant has one, and we have one. So it's hard. The more and more people that discharge to the river, the harder it is to get a permit. So the DNR might not allow them to discharge to the river. And they're considered a rendering facility, so they have to adhere to a lot more strict constituents in their discharge. So their pollutants have to be even lower than what ours are in our permit. But we send out pretty clean water. So, as you can imagine, building this $500 million project at the current wastewater plant that we're running right now is going to be what some contractors say is like open heart surgery. So, in order to keep treating wastewater and build a new plant at the same time, we have to do it in 2 phases. The first phase, we're going to upgrade all the stuff that treats the liquid of the water itself. And that started now. We're at about 30% design. We're doing a different delivery style method of project. What that means is the state of Iowa has now allowed us to go out and solicit a contractor and get them on board early in the design. And then at 90% of the design, they tell us the guaranteed max price. So at 90%, they tell us how much it's going to cost. And then we move forward from there. We don't like that price, we'll get rid of that contractor, get a new one. But the old style was you design it 100%, put it out in the street for all the contractors to see, and then they would bid on it, and then the city would be forced to pick the low bid. That's kind of why we're in these situations with all the cities around the United States, is that delivery style forces you to pretty much pick the guy who has the lowest price. That might be good in some instances, but not always. It's not always better to pay less. So the 2 different phases, as soon as we get done with phase 1 design, we're going to go into construction. That design is supposed to be completed here in about 14 to 15 months. Construction will last about 5 years. So phase 1 will be done in 2035. And then as we are done designing phase 1, we're going to start designing phase 2 when we're in construction of phase 1. Does that make sense? As we're in construction of phase 2, as we're in construction of phase 1, we're not going to wait till that's done to start designing phase 2. We're going to start right away. So as soon as we're done with design, we can go into construction for phase 2. Phase 2 is going to treat all the solids in the wastewater plant. So that's going to upgrade anything that treats the solids. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of solids in wastewater that settle out. We pump them into these tanks and we treat them in there, and then we have to send it out. And basically we treat the solids really well with other microbiology, and that microbiology eats anything that's toxic of nature. And that microbiology gets sent out to get the water separated from it, and all that goes on the farm fields for land apple to recover those nutrients that are still in the solids. There's a lot of phosphorus and nitrogen in there. Yeah, go ahead.
So the EPA is gonna allow this to go to 35 to just in the water, and then we still haven't done the solids? I mean, if we're already at the point where we're over capacity, and by 1935, it's how far above,
Yeah.
how far above capacity is it?
We don't expect the city, so she asked, is the EPA gonna allow us to drag this out this long and wait till 2035 to start construction? Well, we're going as fast as we can.
Yeah, and I
But the EPA is, you know, I think we're in favor of them because we're finally doing something here. As you guys might recall, the city got in trouble in 2014 for violating one of the major pollutants down there at the wastewater plant. One man went to prison for violating, or actually conspiracy of the Clean Water Act. And the other guy got basically in how he had to stay at home, but was on probation for a long time. But yeah, I really hope the EPA sees this in favorable light. We're moving as fast as we can, but you know, anytime they could come in and say, yeah, I am too. It's very critical here in Sioux City. Yeah.
Do you have enough land there to be able to have a second plant being built while the first one's still running?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we're doing is tearing out old abandoned equipment. So there's a whole bank of tanks that's abandoned. We're going to tear that out, and that's where we're going to start building something new. Then once we get that new thing in, then the old process, we can tear that out, build the new. So basically, as we build something new, we tear out the old one and build something new in that spot. Tear out the old one, build something new in that spot. So it's we don't have enough land, but we can strategize where to build something new and then tear out the old thing.
You feel like you're treading water.
Yeah.
It's not water.
Up to here, and you know, yeah.
It's more than 90% water.
Vicky's down there every day. My office is up at City Hall because I still oversee a lot of other things in the wastewater plant. But I can tell you that Vicky's called me a lot and doesn't get full nights of sleep, and we're understaffed. We've got a lot of breakdowns occurring more and more frequently as everything ages. Yeah, go ahead.
The 2014, the two guys that did this and never did here, what was their motivation? It wasn't financial, was it incompetence, they didn't care?
I have no idea.
That was never explained.
I've been subpoenaed 4 times to testify in front of a federal grand jury, and Vicky has too. That's not fun, but we were testimonial witnesses, so they weren't targeting us. They wanted to get information out of us. We just don't quite know. We understood that maybe they were trying to save money because it went from a private operation, so it was being ran privately, that the city was paying a contractor basically to run the plant.
Wasn't the compensation based on performance?
Probably, but no, is compensation based on performance? No, not at all.
Yeah.
City employees, they're just paid strictly across the board. There's no bonuses, there's no
Weren't
nothing.
the 2 people who went to jail, weren't they contract team?
They were when it was contracted privately, but then the city took them over, and some folks got to keep their jobs and work for the city. So at that time, they were city employees. There was no benefit to trying to save money as an employee. What I mean by that is there's no benefit for you to get more money yourself, but they might have been trying to save money on the operational budget to look better maybe and progress through the city. I have no idea why they did it. When I was there, it happened in 2014. I was an operator in training. I didn't know anything about wastewater at that time. So I was just being told what to do and going forward, but honestly, no one's really figured out why they did that.
They never confessed.
Yeah, no one really confessed. I don't know. Yeah. So, phase 1 and 2, not only will we get a brand new facility out of it, but we're not selecting like state-of-the-art technologies. We've been told by the city council and the mayor to select tried and true technologies. So we're not building this for a bunch of bells and whistles or anything like that. We're just trying to get back to operational reliability. And another thing that we get out of this by the end of phase 2 is a slight increase in capacity. So the increase in capacity will allow maybe another Seaboard Triumph size facility to come to town, which would be great to get another industry or 2 in town. Right now, anytime an industry comes knocking on the door, sorry, we have no more capacity. We have to turn them away, even though we're probably a good fit for them here in Sioux City. I don't know if a lot of you folks know, but Sioux City, per population, This is the #1 food producing place in the United States. So we produce the most food per population in the United States, and that certainly shows when we look at our wastewater.
Say, if
Yeah.
you said we're gonna use tried and true, but hasn't there been newer technology in this area that would be, you know, more cost effective also?
There is, but a lot of that technology hasn't been played out long enough. So, for example, Sioux City, they picked a brand new technology called activated granular sludge, and it was supposed to be the best thing ever. It was supposed to treat this industrial waste really well. Well, it's been over a year and they still haven't gotten the granules to form, and they're not treating to the performance that they were told. So we don't want to end up in a situation where the city is not treating wastewater effectively, and now we're stuck in litigation for 5, 6, 7 years with the company that provided this technology. We'd rather just pick the technology that works for something, a large facility like ours. But there are things like, there's high efficiency pumps that we're gonna use, new HVAC systems. We're putting in, I'll talk about this later, but we're putting in a lot of odor control, not only at the wastewater plant, but various locations around the city. A lot of council members and the mayor, myself and everybody and other stakeholders believe that the perception of odor by the residents is going to be, determine how great of a success this project turns out to be. Because, you can drive by the wastewater plant and who cares, all this stuff's being built. Don't really, it's great that we're treating wastewater and things are slightly cleaner than what they were, but if you can drive by there and not get hit with the odor down I-29, I think that'd be a better look for our city. One of my goals personally is to try to get rid of the sewer city stigma that the city has and try to get rid of these odors so when people go down I-29 through our wonderful city here, they don't get hit with all these odors. Cedar Rapids is known for the city of 5 smells, but they tell them their slogan is the city of 5 seasons. And I'm trying to get rid of that for Sioux City. Yeah, go ahead.
What about the taste? Is it gonna be affected? I mean, is it's gonna taste different or cleaner or fresher or?
No, so this is all the, what?
Just the waste.
Yeah, it's just the wastewater.
Just wondering.
But, I think the water plant, the drinking water side, they're gonna have their own hurdles soon. I think over the next 10 years, you guys will hear a lot about it. And I'm just kind of side noting here, with this PFAS talk, where these forever chemicals that are in the water that we've discovered are really, really low concentrations, but they're in our drinking water, just like every city in the United States. But I think, if they have to do something about that, put in RO, reverse osmosis type of treatment, then our drinking water will be soft and it will actually taste a lot better. But that's a whole different conversation, and that's probably just as much as this plant cost, and I guess we'll see what happens in the next 10 years. Yeah.
So will the new plant still utilize chlorine
No,
before it moves out?
that's a great question. Actually, right now, we're about halfway done with a project to utilize UV disinfection.
Yes, I was gonna ask that next.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so we're gonna get rid of all our chemicals, which we use, how much sodium bisulfite and hypochlorite a day?
Oh gosh, 50 gallons an hour. It's 2 tanker trucks a week,
Yeah.
and then 1 tanker truck of dechlorination.
So we go through about 1,000 gallons of sodium hypochlorite, which is really, really, really strong bleach.
Yeah.
And then we can't just discharge this bleached
Right.
water to the river because fish can't handle chlorine. Humans can drink chlorine. I wouldn't advise it. But fish cannot have chlorine in the water. They'll die immediately. So what we have to do is quench the chlorine out with another chemical called sodium bisulfite. And that we use a lot of that a day. Like Vicki said, we go through a tanker, a big semi per week of this chemical. With this new project coming underway, the UV disinfection, all that chemical goes away. And the only time we'll have to utilize it is if for some reason we get more than 55 million gallons per day into the plant, which I don't think is gonna happen. We're fixing a lot of the issues that cause flooding into our facility right now, so it's a great question. Yeah.
Apologies, you probably will get to all these things if we let you get through
No,
your
this is exactly how it's supposed to be.
presentation. But I gotta leave, so before I
Yeah.
leave, are there local contractors who are qualified to do the building, and if so, is there a preference for local?
So that's a kind of a complicated question,
Yeah.
but the construction manager at risk, the general contractor that'll oversee the whole phase one, will most likely not be a local contractor here from Sioux City, because they're just not large enough. There's no one large enough to bond for this plant to do the upgrade. But the focus on the general contractor, whoever gets the job, is to utilize as much local assets and contractors, plumbers, electricians as possible. And they want to. If they don't, that means they would have to mobilize these folks from a different city. Oh, like Omaha or Sioux Falls. They don't want to pay electricians from Omaha to come up here to be sitting here for the next 5 years. That means you're paying their hotels, you're paying for mobilization, you're paying for food, all that stuff. So they would rather have folks that already live in town to do most of the actual work. The people that oversee it won't be from Sioux City, but all the work happening will be Sioux City, companies. But at least we hope, the majority of them are. So you can see that we have a design advisory committee. So all this is being overseen by a committee that the mayor and the council has formed. So Wastewater Reconstruction Design Advisory Committee, it's open to the public. We meet once a month, the fourth Friday of every month? Fourth Thursday? Fourth Thursday of every
We have
month.
the same problem, we've been doing this for 10 years, it's always been called the fourth Tuesdays, but even our main people,
Yeah.
is that the fourth Thursday?
Yeah.
So,
That's how I get, sometimes I don't know what day it is sometimes, so. Fourth Tuesday of every month, we're probably on our 9th or 10th meeting by now. And you guys are more than welcome to come, but there's the actual folks on the committee, they vote what to recommend to the council. The last vote was to recommend what delivery method. Do we do the low bid style or do we pick our own contractor? And they decided to, hey, let's see if the council is open to picking our own contractor. The next big decision the council or the committee will make is there's a couple lift stations around town that we need to actually replace. We can rebuild them for about X amount of money, or for about 10% more, just completely rebuild it brand new. So we can rehab it or rebuild them brand new. That's the next big decision for the committee. But they oversee the design, they oversee the rate increase aspect of it. So they're heavily involved, and they vote on all these different actions that we're doing. So it's not just me and Vicky going crazy out here selecting the most expensive stuff off the shelf and doing that kind of thing. We're overseeing.
Is that a lift station that's kind of like underneath the bridge that goes over to South Sioux? There's something over there that just smells horrible.
Yeah. You're talking over by
Are
Perry.
you talking about like the Flight 232 Memorial right
That's
there?
the
Yeah,
question.
there's a lift station right there.
Yeah,
The
that's
lift station
called
smells
Prairie
like
Creek
that.
Lift Station, and yeah, we're looking to do some work there. Riverside Lift Station is one that we're going to do a lot of work at. There's some residents that live next to that can't even go outside in the summer because the odor's so bad. They're having a hard time selling their homes, stuff like that. So we're hoping to rebuild that lift station and put significant odor control there.
And this committee meets when now, the fourth Thursday?
Yep, we meet every fourth Thursday of the month.
Fourth Thursday?
Yep,
And
at
we're
10 o'clock at the wastewater plant.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Who's on that?
On your way to Southdale. Stop.
Oh,
Visit.
You had a question, who's on the committee?
Yeah, who's on this committee?
Yeah.
In town?
Yep.
Versus local people that's making decisions?
That's a great question, and I should have explained that a little better. We've asked a lot of people to be on the committee. Some people declined it, so we asked the Chamber of Commerce and the Siouxland Initiative which are the ones that stirred a lot of this up, that didn't want the project to go forward.
Mhm.
Well, they won't show up. They don't want to be on it. Every sister city has their city manager on it. So the Dunes, Sergeant Bluff, North Sioux, South Sioux, I think I said them all. They all have representatives. I think 5 different industrial users. So we asked all the industries who wanted to be on it. Out of the 32 majors, all of them had a seat if they wanted to seat. But out of the 32, only 5 wanted to be represented. And we have about 5, maybe 6, just normal citizens that sit on it. They're perfect for it. A couple of them are retired architects, retired engineers, stuff like that. So they really like this. It kind of is their new full-time job. They're emailing me every day and asking this and that. It's great. I love that we have folks that are very interested in the project.
Have you invited environmental conservation groups to be in the committee?
Sorry, I didn't hear you very well.
Have you been invited conservation groups, environmental groups, any green groups to be in your committee or that committee?
Yeah, I think in hindsight, we should have, I didn't make the decision who sits on the committee, but environmental groups maybe should have been on it.
Yeah.
But there's, like I said, it's open to the public, and if you want to reach out to the council, or I could talk to them on your guys' behalf, if you want to have a representative from here on the committee, we could certainly look into that. I don't think there's no reason why that couldn't happen.
It has to be approved by the council, or it's open meetings and you
Yep,
can show
you'd
up?
have to fill out an application,
Oh,
and then you go up in front of council and you tell them why you think you should serve on the committee. Then they wait a week, and then the next council meeting, because they have a council meeting every Monday, they'll vote you in or off. So I don't see why they wouldn't say no.
yeah, there should be the public who are footing the bill to be seated in that committee.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and it shouldn't be appointed or permission to the council. It should be an open meeting.
It is open.
They are.
Yeah.
And it's published.
Yep, our council meetings minutes are published on our city website. All the agenda is on the city website. All the presentations that we deliver. It's about a 2-hour meeting. It gets pretty deep and detailed into things at times. All that's published. It's all open to the public. And it's always, the doors are always open for any member of the public to come in and sit on the meeting.
Oh, good.
Yep.
I might show up to your meeting.
Yeah, that wouldn't bother me. All right, so project benefits. Obviously, this doesn't show up very well up there, but it protects the environment. It helps with the economy, especially, as we can increase capacity, we can get more industry in town, more commercial users in town. And not only that, but the 10 years that we're under construction, there's going to be a lot of economic, not growth, but money being generated by these local contractors that are in town. Like I said earlier, a big part of it is to reduce odor. So reducing odor at the plant, at Riverside Lift Station, York Lift Station, and Floyd Lift Station are the ones that we're tackling right away. As you know, the wastewater plant's down there by the ballpark and Cone Park and stuff like that. So when folks are, in Perry Park, which is a beautiful new park in town here, we don't want these odors floating over there like they do now. So the big goal is to try to reduce odors is a big one at the plant here. And revitalization, not only for the growth and development of the community, but just knowing that wastewater treatment plant is now going to be a viable asset to the community. The wastewater treatment plant is the most expensive thing that we have in town. It's by far the most expensive asset, number 2 to the water treatment plant. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
You have a recreation there,
Yep,
and I know you have a fishing lake there by the sewer plant.
yep.
And you ever stock that with fish, number 1? And number 2 is, how is the construction going to impact that when you build the new facilities?
Yeah, so infrastructure will not encroach on Perry Park, which is the park you're talking about. And to answer the fish restocking, I believe the Iowa DNR does stock that with fish. My wife and I have gone down there and we've caught some fish sometime, a few fish. Some nice bass are in there.
Did you eat them?
No, we didn't eat them. I kind of know the history of that lake. So that pond used to be an old sludge storage pond for the wastewater treatment plant. That, I think it's completely clean. I think I'm not saying you can't eat fish out of there,
You know, the ducks and geese like the fish.
but I don't eat bass anyways.
Just sport fishing.
So when we started into the facility plan, and but the engineer and the community leaders, the committee, decided, we were asked, what are the three main drivers of this project by our engineer? And this is what the council, mayor, and the committee, and Vicki and I all came up with. Is safety and odors is number one. As you can imagine, everything down there is corroding, breaking apart. Handrails, you can't lean on the handrails down there anymore. You can't get too close to certain areas, or you'll get, if you go into some of our buildings, the H2S, the hydrogen sulfide levels are so high in the air, in the buildings, that if you go in there, you'll die. So all of our folks, they wear these meters that measure the H2S, oxygen content, lower explosion limits on their waste. And if they get into a situation, there's a little guy that will call you and ask, are you okay? If you fall down, it'll call you and send an ambulance over to you. So our buildings are not even safe to go in right now. That's due to the bad HVAC systems. There's no odor control out there. It's just not a very good position to be in. If that equipment breaks, nobody can go in there to fix it until we shut everything down for a day or two, which we don't have. We don't have storage for that kind of stuff. Open up all the windows and doors. Now we got pigeons in there living and crapping everywhere. There's a whole other environmental issue for us to live in or work in. This is a 24/7 plant. There's always someone down there working. So sometimes there's only one guy because we're so short-staffed, and we get, we lose a lot of sleep when we're knowing, oh crap, there's only one guy down there for the next 8 hours.
Does the
You
city?
don't crap a lot.
It's kind of in my industry.
Have they approved you hiring more people?
We tried to hire more people during this last capital improvement plan, and we got denied.
You got denied for trying to hire more people.
Yep. So in order to hire people, you get one time a year.
Right.
It's called CIP, and you go and you present to the council and the city manager and the mayor why you need these people. This year, they asked every department to cut their operational budget by 5%, because we're in a kind of an economic hard time for the city. So it was hard to make a case to hire more people, even though we feel like there should be. We look at other communities. Davenport is a much, much smaller wastewater plant than us. They have 32 operators running their plant. We have 10. We have 10.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of if one guy or two guys want vacation at the same time, it makes it hard. We got to bring this guy from day shift to night shift. Now his wife's mad at him because he's working nights for 3 weeks, and it's a whole big mess because we don't have the right enough people. Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess 2 questions. First, where can we find this information? Is there like a web page dedicated to this?
Yep. At the very end, there will be a QR code that will send you to the website, but it might not work because it's kind of cut off. But you can go to the city website, sioux-city.org, and go to the wastewater section, and then click facility plan, and all this information will be up. And there's big PowerPoints you can download to look at that are 30-some slides that go into more detail about this. Then this is just 10,000 foot level, not going into the process or the details of it.
So then the second part of this is, obviously we want our water to be clean. We don't want people to possibly you know, be locked down for 8 hours in some scary room with a bunch of pigeons.
Yeah.
You know, kind of that. So what can we as citizens do to try to help to, like, get it to a place where we have enough people working and, you
Yeah.
know, more people are aware of the situation that's going on?
You know, if you want to show up to these committee meetings, or if you want to show up to a council meeting at the end, there's a citizen's concern. So you could step up and talk about it if you wanted there. But right now, it's the most important part is about voting for your local representatives. So voting for your council members and mayors. All the council members unanimously approved this project. So it goes to show that the folks in town are picking the right people to look after our infrastructure. The mayor abstained, and I'm not sure why. That doesn't mean he voted no or voted yes. He just stayed out of it. But you know, voting, going to these kind of meetings, coming to our meeting, or going to the city council, or even emailing the city council.
Thank you.
Yep. So the second one here I didn't talk about is operational reliability. That kind of goes into, we're operating at 110, 120% capacity. So typically the Iowa DNR likes to see, you know, we have these big giant blowers. We have 4 of them. They're each 900 horsepower, and they provide oxygen to the very crucial step that treats the wastewater. And the oxygen is needed by these microbiology to eat the pollutants out of the wastewater. Well, we have to run all 4 of them. So if one breaks, now we don't have enough oxygen to supply the microbacteria, and now the water quality level goes down a little bit. Typically, you know, you'd run 2 of them, and if one broke, you could turn the 3rd one on, and if, ooh, there's a big slug load of stuff coming to the plant, we'll turn the 4th one on. But we always have all 4 of them on. We always have all of our lift station pumps on. We have all of our centrifuges on when we can run them if they're not broken. We have all of our equipment is on, so when something breaks, there's nothing else to turn on. So it might take a month or 2 to fix that piece of equipment, because we don't have any small equipment. Everything's super large. Our equipment is so specialized that even like a bearing for the equipment is, you know, $10,000. So we got to go and get it approved by council. Council has to approve it, and that takes a week. Then we order it. It takes 2-3 months for the part to show up. If we have the part on the shelf, it might fit, but then something else is broken. It's just, when you're working with stuff that's over 60 years old, it's tough to keep things running. And I couldn't imagine my truck being 60 years old and trying to keep it going.
Grant or something you could get to help with some of that?
So unfortunately there is, and we're doing that now. We're renting equipment now. And that's not cost effective at all. So we're renting a belt filter press to help our centrifuges out. It's outside, it's cost a lot of money to run. If you run it for more than 8 hours a day, then it costs even more. And we're 24/7 operation, so we don't shut anything down. Someone else had a question over here.
I was just saying, so you have to be technically savvy,
Yeah,
besides, you know, to do all this, you know, put the new part in, fix it, and do all this too.
yeah. We have an exceptional group of staff that we have down there, and they take their job seriously. But a lot of this stuff, no one's an expert at all this stuff. So they get the book out and they just start reading the manual and figuring out how this actually works, because some of the equipment is really complicated stuff. It's you know, we're at that critical state where we should have done this 10 years ago, and we should now be turning on the new plant. But nothing better than the present, and we're doing it now, and we're trying not to think about the past too much.
So thinking about the future, is there any new fun technology that you're looking at for fats, oils, and greases?
So that's a great question. So our new primary clarifiers that we're going to put in have automatic skimming systems that will help us remove a lot more fats, oils, and greases. Thank, you know, whoever you want to thank, but we haven't violated, I don't think, ever on fog out the back of the plant.
Not
What?
not during, it was years ago.
Oh, years ago? So, no, probably the last decade or so, we haven't had fats, oils, and grease issues, but that's a big one that we want to attack. That's a big part of the plan of this project. If that stuff gets in the wrong area and the wrong process of the plant, we start getting a lot of issues with different types of bacteria that's growing.
I'm not sure, were you saying fat?
Yeah,
Fats,
that's
oils,
what-
and grease.
I remember, okay, then all these new techniques and solarization, I call it, whatever the UV, whatever. The organic materials, it helps break all that down. What about the chemicals that were ingested by, what about the chemicals that are in the water? Cause I remember when we were out there before, they were saying that was, and we visited those same two guys, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, at Sierra Club at one time, and they were saying that's the kind of stuff you can't get out.
Yeah.
Those chemicals, is there any intervention for that?
You know,
Cause it goes into the Missouri River.
yeah.
And then it'll disperse a little bit, downstream it gets a little better, but.
So she's asked, how can we remove more chemicals that might get into the wastewater? And I don't know who you talked to before, but that's not really, I guess I don't want to say that's not how it works, but our biology and our secondary process, that's the heart of the plant, does actually consume a lot of those chemicals.
Oh, it does.
Yep, so every year we have to do what's called a toxicity test to see if there are a lot of abundant chemicals in our treated water. So we take our 2 big jugs of this treated water, we send it down to the Iowa Hygienics Lab in Iowa City, and they do all these crazy tests with it. They put minnows in it, and the minnow has to live so many days. If it doesn't, you fail. There's fleas that they put on top of the water, and if they die, if too many of them die, you know, it's very sensitive testing. In fact, in 2019, 2020, during COVID, they couldn't do any of this testing because everyone was putting alcohol disinfection on their hands and spraying it all over the lab, counters and stuff, and it killed all the fleas, and they couldn't do the testing, and everything died. That was an exception, but so they do a lot of toxicity. We have to do the toxicity testing, and then every time we get a new permit, which is every 5 years, we have to do this huge array of testing, all the chemicals, all the metals that are in it, all the salts that are in it, which is chlorides and stuff like that. So we do extensive testing to ensure, but
what is it that you use for those chemicals?
the city ourselves, we use
What method?
we only use 4 different chemicals in our whole treatment process. In our collection system, we use odor control kind of chemicals to try to keep the odor in the water. So it kind of does a pH balance to make sure the water holds the odor. Then at the plant, we use the sodium bisulfite, sodium hypochlorite for disinfection. And those are going to go. The chemicals that I just mentioned for odor control are most likely going to go. And the other one is we use acid at our biogas facility to treat the biogas that we put into the natural gas pipeline. So by the time this is all said and done, we'll probably only use 1 chemical. And then I really wish we could get rid of that one too.
Well, I don't know, what I was talking about was, let's say cattle ingest chemicals.
Yep.
They're doing all sorts of things to make them supposedly healthier for us to eat, those types of things.
Yep. So those dissolved kind of chemicals, they do get eaten by the bugs. They prefer those type of weird things that we couldn't imagine eating, but they do eat them.
And a lot of it comes out with the solids.
Exactly.
Right.
A lot of it does stick in the solids that then gets eaten by other biology before it gets put out to the farm.
Do you not have waste trucked in?
We do. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that goes directly, most of that goes directly into our digesters. So it goes right into the solids treatment process.
Tell us about the biogas pipeline.
Yeah. So about 5 years ago, the city decided to build a biogas facility. So we have, to start this off, what's biogas? biogas is made in a certain process at the wastewater treatment plant. And that's where all the solids eventually go into these tanks. Like I said earlier, these tanks are exactly like our stomachs. We treat them we heat them up to 98 degrees. We mix them really well, like your stomach mixes when it wants to get hungry and stuff like that, and also releases gas like we do. And a part of the treatment process is that gas release, and that gas is methane gas. And we used to just flare it all off, so we'd have a big pipe and we'd light the end of that, and it'd be a giant 20-foot flare going for 24/7, just burning off all this wasted energy. So now we take that gas, instead of flaring it, we treat it so that it's 99.99% methane. Before we treat it, it's about 60% methane. So we get all the impurities out of the gas, which is mainly carbon dioxide, and we inject that into the natural gas pipeline for environmental credits that the city gets. It's a great process, but it's going to take a while to pay itself off. The city was kind of conned in by a different engineering firm to do this. And the reason why I say conned is because they were told it was about an 18-month return on investment, but it's really looking like 5 to 7 years return on investment, which is still not bad, but it wasn't like we thought it would be. And Vicki and I don't like throwing people under the bus, but we didn't have any decisions in that process. If we could do it all over again, I'd take that money and put it into the plant and not treat the biogas, even though it's such a green, good thing, but the plant is in such bad condition that it's more, those fun things we should do later, we should really keep the viability of the plant running. Well, like I said earlier, addressing odors, we're going to spend about $20 million just at the plant, and probably another 15 at different various locations across the city. I've been harping on operational reliability, so these are the goals, and then the community growth. So we like to see that there's a little bit of capacity expansion on this plant, and we can get more industry into town. So this is some pictures of the plant. There's a second picture you can't really see, but they're just showing different locations around the plant that are really in dire need. And I've talked a lot about that. I don't think there's much more to say. And I guess I want to say this though, if any of you guys, or if you as a group want to do another tour, don't be afraid to get a hold of me or Vicki or anybody at the city to give you a tour, so that it's not just coming out of my mouth. You can see it yourself. You're gonna have to wear a gas monitor though. So we don't want any of us dying.
Don't lean on the handrail.
So here's the plant. I guess you can't really see it all there because it's kind of cut off, but it's showing a bunch of different areas of the plant that's going to be replaced, which is pretty much everything besides these tanks here. Those have been found to still have quite a few years of life. When I say few, it's like 30 to 50 more years. This is a generational project, so this is gonna just happen this time, and then what we're gonna do after this project's completed is get another facility plan started, so that every 10 years we have a strategic way to ensure that the maintenance and everything of the plant is being looked at, and that there's a plan moving forward, and not just put a bunch of money into it, let it all corrode, and we'll come back to it in 60 years. We're not gonna do that because it's too damn expensive to do that. So what we're doing is we're not gonna drop after these rate increases that we're experiencing, the residents are getting year one, which has already happened, was last year, 20% rate increase. This year, which already happened, another 10%. Next year is 5%, and every year after that, it's gonna be 5% forever. That's what we hope. Only the first 4 years have been approved by council, but we hope to ensure that we have enough money to keep this plant operating like it should be, that we have this 5% rate increase going indefinitely, so that we can save a bank of money. And in case we do have to replace the process, we have the money in hand. We don't have to go seek loans. We don't have to raise the rates. Everything's just flat. Here's the different phases. Phase 1, 2, like I said, it doesn't show up very well, but like I said, phase 1's liquid, phase 2 is solids. There is a phase 3, that's for the future. That's in case at any time a large industry decides, hey, we want to make Sioux City home. Hey, now we have a plan. Now we can put our plan into play and make sure that we can get these folks into town. Here's the schedule for the project. As you can see, there's a lot going on here, but we're in this phase right now. So we're about right here, halfway through 2024. And at the end of phase 1 construction is 2035. And then you can see end of construction, we'll be starting the design of phase 2. Phase 1 is $300 million, and phase 2 is $170 million. The rate increase that you guys have experienced is paying for both phases. But why did they break it up into 2 different phases? I'm talking about the city council. Instead of doing one big project and doing these 2 phases back to back, we're gonna bring it back to council to approve for phase 2. And at that time, we'll look at the rates. So by that time, we'll already know how much phase 1 cost. Maybe it only came in at $250 million. So maybe we can ease off on the rates a little bit, or readjust them in some way. Or maybe it comes in at $400 million and we have to jack the rates up again. I really hope that's not what happens. To do these rate increases was tough. It's not something that anybody wants to experience.
Well, just, I don't know, prices increase as you draw this thing out?
Yep, and that's been incorporated into these estimates.
Okay.
So they're not today's estimates, they're 2035 estimates, which is a lot of inflationary, a lot of unknowns into that estimate, but we gotta start somewhere. So this is just kind of a really simple schematic of the plant, which is really not that simple, but just pretty much emphasizing that it's a generational project. This infrastructure is an asset to the community. It's not something we should look at negatively. It's something we should be proud of that we have. We hope that this lasts for 50 more years, and the plan is to go forward and have something in place that we don't have to raise the rates up like we did this time. So there's supposed to be the QR code, but if you want, you can't see the whole thing, I'll leave my monitor up here and you can see it. That's the whole presentation. I went way over, but we had a lot of good questions.
So you're saying some of the industrial users go through 50,000 gallons of water a day.
Yep.
Are they taking that directly from the river or from city water?
City water. Yep. All of our industrial users, except for I think Gelita. I think they have their own wells, maybe. But besides Gelita, all of them are using the 16 to 20 million gallons of water purchased from the city water treatment plants.
So the kind of optimistic person, and optimistic isn't the right word, but anyway, so I'm thinking, if Chamber doesn't want to increase rates for the wastewater treatment for the industries, but could you just raise the water?
Yeah,
rate?
that's a great question.
Incentivize them to maybe.
There's checks and balances that the state of Iowa has mandated. We only can use sewer funds for sewer things.
Well, yeah, but if we were to increase the water rates, they might implement more water saving measures.
Yeah.
And then reduce the load.
And we've looked at that too. Most likely they will try to save water, but they're still going to release the same amount of pollutants. It'll just be more concentrated.
That's true.
So it'll be less watery
Good point.
pollutants. Yes, sir.
This is probably really not you're doing, but with the CAFOs in Iowa, you're trying to keep the our river clean.
Yep.
The rest, wherever you are in the state, whether it's the Des Moines River, Mississippi, but with the CAFOs in Iowa, the same hogs that are coming here that we're slaughtering, 30 million hogs in Iowa.
Yep.
It's not working, for the environmentally.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not your call, but it's kind of pointless.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I'm kind of an activist against, you know, the state looks at even farm fields, which we need, right? We need these farm fields that destroy 99% of our land here in Iowa. We need those to provide food to the world, but they need to implement better practices in agriculture and in livestock raising to reduce the amount of these nutrients that are going to the river. Wastewater plants get picked on because we have a discharge permit that the state has given us, but they're not making, for some reason, these farmers that have these pipes that go into these drainage ditches
Right.
adhere to any of these environmental standards of nutrient reduction. So I've seen a statistic, it's about 75% of all the nitrogen coming from the state of Iowa is from ag runoff and not implementing the right type of practices to put these types of nutrients into the soil. But we're the ones that get picked on because we have a permit and they control us.
Is this a nationwide problem of the waste treatment across the country? They're all about the same time probably built.
Yep.
The major cities, they gotta be running into the same problems.
Yep, you're exactly correct. In 1961, the Clean Water Act came out. And when the Clean Water Act came out, well, no one had sewer rates in place, no one had money to build these wastewater plants. So majority of these plants, including our own, was funded by the feds. So the federal government funded all these plants in the 60s, and they built them all. And they said, here it is, you're on your own now. Even to this day, there's no grants for us for this facility from the feds. So we're on our own, and everybody's about in the same boat. So looking at it this way on a graph, our sewer rates are kind of towards the bottom. After all the rate increase in the state of Iowa, we're at the bottom. After these rate increases, we're going to be kind of in the bottom third. But these other people that are at the bottom, they're moving up too because they have to fix theirs. So eventually, after all these communities do all their fixing of their wastewater plants, we're going to be right back at the bottom again. That's a good place to be in when things are running smooth.
Was there any money from the infrastructure bill that would benefit the treatment plant?
We're doing a small project to fix some aspects of our digesters. It's a really small, it's like $14 million. That's a big number, but when you're talking $500 million, that seems pretty small. So I didn't want to say $14 million is small, but that project might qualify for the Infrastructure Tax Act because it's benefiting more biogas being created. But everything else is those type of infrastructure tax acts for wastewater, they're just targeted for energy production. And that's what we do. We have a small power plant down at the wastewater plant. And so that's why we would qualify for that portion of the project. But everything else, they're not. The only thing we got is $1 million grant for using state revolving funds. And $1 million out of 500 million is, you know, 1/500th of a percent. So we'll take it. We'll take any million we can get here and there, and we're looking. But the best thing that's happened is the SRF fund, to fund this, we're using these funds from the state revolving loans. We got a 30-year note for 2% interest. So that's not too bad. 2% interest on this project to utilize the state's funds. And that 2% eventually will come back to the city, and we have to do a sponsored project, is what they call, and we can clean up one of our waterways in town here. We're doing a sponsored project right now at Pulaski Park. It's the ball fields down along Old Highway 75, and we're doing a whole stormwater cleanup from Pulaski Park all the way up to Morningside. We're spending about $2 million on the stormwater system. That's free money from the money they used from 2007 to fix the plant. So those interest money that the state actually gives you back after you pay off your loan. So 30 years from now, we'll get this 2% of 500 million back, which will be a lot of money that the city can use for only stormwater stream restoration. Any other questions?
30 years.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you guys. You guys have been so good.